Zdeno Chara was just a massive Slovak with a reach like a giraffe who couldn't do a crossover to save his life, moved like he had cement in his skates, and looked like he'd snap in half when he turned. But he also had a brain the size of Boston, would make forwards wet themselves when they saw him at the blue line, would tell guys exactly how he'd stop them, and then do it, and dominated in a defensive role because regular hockey was too easy for him. Finished with a Stanley Cup, a Norris Trophy, 7 All-Star appearances, and the hardest shot ever recorded. Dude, his psychotic dedication to shutting down scorers. Zdeno Chara might be a freakishly tall guy with a face that scared children and knees that barely bent, but he was also the most intimidating defender to ever lace up skates in a league that features some of the quickest and most skilled athletes the game has ever seen. If you're already blown away by Chara's insane combination of size, strength, and mental game, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because we're just getting started. How the hell did a guy who moved like a cruise ship not only survive, but completely shut down the fastest, most skilled players in hockey? Players who could change direction in a heartbeat were getting erased by a dude who took 5 seconds to turn around. Well, to find out, let's go back to Trenčín, Slovakia. Born in 1977, the son of a Greco-Roman wrestler, Chara loved one thing more than anything. And no, it wasn't hockey at first. While other kids were born with skates on, young Zdeno was actually more interested in track and field, where his massive frame was already making him stand out. Growing up in Trenčín, Slovakia, where communism ruled and money didn't exist, Zdeno was the son of an Olympic wrestler who treated childhood like boot camp. The Chara household wasn't about participation trophies or pats on the back. It was about another set of drills when your arms felt like they were falling off. Zdeno Chara was an Olympic athlete who basically beat discipline into his kid's DNA. While other boys were playing with toys, Zdeno was learning how many push-ups he could do before passing out. Living in a cramped apartment block with walls thin enough to hear the neighbors breathe, Chara knew nothing but hard work. His dad would drag his ass out of bed at 5 a.m. when it was still dark as hell for workouts that would make grown men quit. If you're not puking, you're not trying, was basically the family motto. His mom worked double shifts as a nurse just to keep food on the table, while his dad demanded Olympic effort from a kid still losing baby teeth. When puberty hit, it hit like a truck on steroids. Practically overnight, Zdeno shot up to a ridiculous 6 feet 7 inches by age 16, and suddenly couldn't skate without eating ice every 5 seconds. Coaches looked at this gangly mess of limbs and laughed him off the rink. Go play basketball, kid. You're too damn tall for hockey. He'd trip over the blue line and fall on his face while smaller players zipped around him like he was a traffic cone with legs. His freakish size was a curse nobody knew how to handle. Local coaches treated him like a lost cause. Too tall, too awkward, too slow. But those long-ass arms also meant he could reach halfway across the rink, and when he did connect a hit, smaller guys stayed down. Problem was, he connected about as often as a drunk trying to thread a needle. While the naturally gifted kids were getting scouted, Zdeno was the last one on the ice every damn day, doing basic edge work that 7-year-olds had mastered. Arena managers would literally turn the lights off trying to get him to leave. He'd then go home and do flexibility drills in his bedroom until midnight just so he could bend his knees like a normal human being. Not because he loved training, because he had to work twice as hard just to not look like a giraffe having a seizure on skates. By 17, he still looked awkward as hell. The culture shock hit harder than any forward. North American rinks were smaller, the game faster, and players finished checks like they were trying to put you through the boards. While other imports were homesick, Chara was getting his teeth kicked in every night and then struggling to order food at restaurants. When most kids would have packed up and gone home crying to mommy, Chara doubled down. Started waking up at 4:30 a.m. to do extra skating sessions with a figure skating coach who took pity on this oversized disaster. By his second season, something started to click. Chara wasn't good. Hell, he wasn't even average. But he'd figured out how to use that ridiculous reach to keep guys to the outside. And when he did connect a hit, ambulances got called. He wasn't scoring points, but suddenly power forwards who normally charge the net like bulls were taking wide turns around his side of the ice. His plus-minus wasn't pretty, but scouts started noticing how nobody wanted to play against him. The 1996 NHL draft rolled around with zero hype for Chara. No pre-draft interviews, no highlight reels. Just a massive Slovak kid sitting there while 55 other names got called. The New York Islanders finally took a flyer on him in the 3rd round, 56th overall, probably figuring if hockey didn't work out, they could use him to clean the arena rafters without a ladder. When his name got called, Half the scouts in the building had to check their notes to figure out who the hell he was. The Islanders didn't even fly him in for rookie camp, just sent him paperwork and told him when to show up. His first NHL training camp in 1997, coaches didn't know whether to use him as a defenseman or just park his giant ass in front of the net as a forward. At practice, veteran players would intentionally dump pucks into his corner to watch him struggle to turn and retrieve them, laughing their asses off while he banged into the boards like a pinball. His first NHL game, the coach gave him exactly 6 shifts, total ice time of 3 minutes and 24 seconds, barely enough time to break a sweat. But on his third shift, he crushed some forward into the first row, and suddenly the crowd learned his name. The guy stumbled to the bench looking like he'd been hit by a truck, and one teammate nudged the other and said, "Maybe there's something to this big bastard after all." It wasn't much, but in a league that chewed up Europeans and spit them out daily, it was a start. A pretty shitty start, but a start nonetheless. Chara's first couple years with the Islanders were a straight-up disaster. Coaches would send him over the boards and pray he didn't cause a goal against. Elite forwards, like Jágr and Bure, would see Big Z on the ice, and their eyes would light up like it was Christmas morning. These speedsters would blow past him while he was still turning his gigantic frame around. One game against the Penguins, Jágr juked him so bad that Chara's jockstrap practically ended up in the 5th row. The New York media was brutal. The big mistake, one headline called him. Islanders coach Mike Milbury, maybe the dumbest hockey mind to ever stand behind a bench, had no clue what to do with him. Some nights Milbury would play him 4 minutes. Other nights he'd scratch him completely. Worst of all, they'd occasionally throw him on the power play and park him in front of the net like some oversized traffic cone, completely wasting his actual defensive instincts. In team meetings, Milbury would use Chara as the example of what not to do, humiliating him in front of teammates who already thought he was a joke. By year 3, the Islanders were ready to dump his ass. GM Mike Milbury, yes, same idiot, different job title, threw Chara into a trade with Ottawa basically as an afterthought. The real prize in the deal was Roberto Luongo, who the Islanders stupidly gave up on too. Milbury basically gifted the Senators a future Hall of Fame defenseman because he couldn't see past Chara's awkward skating. In Ottawa, everything changed. Head coach Jacques Martin took one look at this mammoth defenseman and saw what New York couldn't, a guy whose wingspan could cover half the defensive zone if used right. Instead of trying to make Chara into something he wasn't, Martin gave him simple instructions. Don't worry about scoring, don't pinch, just shut down the opponent's best player every night. For the first time in his career, someone was playing to his strengths instead of highlighting his weaknesses. Paired with Wade Redden, who could handle the puck and quarterback the offense, Chara was free to focus on what he did best, making skilled forwards regret coming to the rink that day. His ice time jumped from 8 to 10 minutes a night to over 20. The hockey world saw the transformation almost overnight. The awkward giant who couldn't get out of his own way was evolving into something terrifying, a 6-foot 9-inch shutdown machine with a mean streak that made opponents check the schedule to see when they'd have to face him again. Ottawa fans who'd initially groaned when they heard he was part of the trade were now showing up with signs reading, "The Carinator" and "No Trespassing, Chara's Zone." The moment Chara signed that monster contract with Boston in 2006, Bruins fans weren't sure what they were getting. Some giant dude who might be good for a few hits and maybe clearing the crease? Boy, they had no damn clue what was coming. What seemed like a massive overpay turned into the biggest steal since the Louisiana Purchase. From day one, they slapped the C on his chest, and that's when the real Chara stood up. The league had created a monster, and Boston gave him the keys to the city. His first couple years there, the Norris Trophy votes started piling up, but voters still had a hard-on for guys who put up points. Then 2009 hit, and Chara said, "Enough of this shit," and put together a season so dominant, they couldn't deny him anymore. The man was playing 28 minutes a night, shutting down superstars and launching absolute bombs from the point. When they finally handed him the Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman, the presenter had to stand on a damn box just to reach his shoulder. The 2011 Stanley Cup run was when Chara morphed from great player to straight-up legend. Going up against the offensive powerhouse Vancouver Canucks in the finals, coach Claude Julien would just tap Chara's shoulder every time the Sedin twins hit the ice. Henrik and Daniel Sedin had been carving up the league all year, but Chara erased them like they were written in pencil. Game 7, on the road, Chara played damn near 30 minutes, and the Sedins looked like they'd rather be anywhere else but on that ice. When Boston won, Chara lifting that cup 9 feet in the air became the image nobody could forget. The most terrifying thing about peak Chara wasn't just his skill, it was the psychological warfare. Alexander Ovechkin, the human wrecking ball himself, once went full speed to hit Chara, bounced off like he hit a brick wall, and then avoided that matchup the rest of the night. Sidney Crosby, the best player in the world, would see Chara hop over the boards and immediately change his route through the neutral zone. His stick was basically illegal in any fair competition. With that 65-inch twig, the NHL had to create a Chara rule to even allow it. He could poke check guys from a different area code. The All-Star Skills competition turned into the Chara show every year. His slap shot broke the record at 108.8 miles per hour. A shot so hard goalies would literally flinch when he wound up. One poor bastard on the Rangers blocked a Chara shot with his ankle and the bone exploded like it was hit by a sledgehammer. After that, guys would just let those bombs go through and apologize to their goalies later. Zdeno Chara wasn't fast, but man, did he make you feel like you were. Forget about chasing down speedy wingers. Chara just outsmarted them. His secret weapon? That freakishly long reach. The dude had a stick that looked like a flagpole, and with it, he could poke check someone from the other side of the ice. If you tried to dangle around him, you might as well have been dancing in a phone booth. His stick was longer than your excuses for not showing up to work on a Monday. But let's talk about his brain. Yeah, Chara's IQ on the ice was as high as the salary cap hit. He was eating up. He didn't need to chase the play. He'd already be in the right spot before you even thought about making your move. If you weren't quick enough to dodge him, he'd pin you against the boards like a grown man with a toy. And don't even think about out-muscling him. The guy could bench press a Buick. His physical strength didn't just come from lifting weights, it came from grinding it out game after game, season after season. Chara didn't tire out. He wore people down. Endurance was his second nature. You'd see him eating up 28 minutes a night and still be the guy diving in front of shots in overtime. While most players were gasping for air, Chara was still moving that giant body like it was a warm-up lap. And of course, let's not forget his leadership. Chara wasn't just a guy you feared on the ice. He was the one pulling guys together when the stakes were high. You could see it in those clutch moments. His presence told you everything. And the opponents, they didn't just respect him. They feared the man who made them think twice about every move they made. As the NHL got faster and flashier, Chara didn't just hang on, he adapted. Yeah, the game was speeding up, but that didn't mean Chara was slowing down. By the time his late career rolled around, you could have sworn he had discovered the fountain of youth. The man played in a league where skaters were hitting 100 miles per hour, but Chara, he was still out there blocking shots, winning battles in the corner, and using that massive wingspan like he was teaching a class on how to defend. In his final years, it wasn't about numbers or awards, it was about pure, gritty survival. And while the guy wasn't logging Norris-level minutes anymore, he was still a rock in his own end, helping mentor younger defensemen. His 209 career goals and over 1,680 regular season games played? Yeah, that's a hell of a legacy. But Chara's true mark on the game wasn't about his stats. It was about the influence he had on the next generation. Younger defensemen looked up to him, not just for his size, but for his dedication and leadership. Every kid with a dream of making it in the NHL knew Chara wasn't just a beast. He was a blueprint. And their respect? Don't think for a second that players who once feared him didn't still look over their shoulder when Chara was on the ice. His physicality might have been less of a headline in his final years, but that intimidation factor never went away. Chara was still a giant, even if his skating wasn't as fast as it used to be. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more hockey content. Got a favorite Chara moment? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.